right, so one of our new Harvest of the Month recipes for Winter Squash Month is a quinoa black bean veggie burger. And I've got all my ingredients here ready to be mashed together and formed into veggie burgers. So I've got our cooked winter squash that just came out of the oven a few minutes ago, so it's cooled enough for me to handle it, because essentially what I'm going to do is I'm really going to rely on the winter squash as the binder in these veggie burgers. There's no egg or anything else to really hold it all together, but I'm really going to mash. And so because I'm doing such a small quantity, I'm just going to use my hands, but you can also use a mixing bowl like the one behind me, or you probably have bigger ones in your school kitchens. But essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix. We've got some quinoa here that I've cooked, and it's cool. Quinoa is an awesome complete protein that's vegetarian. I think there's just a few complete proteins for vegetarians. All the rest are meat. And then our canned black beans that I have drained and rinsed. And they're low sodium, but if they're not, you really want to make sure you're rinsing them and you're getting a lot of that sodium out. And then the squash here I had just diced up. So we have a great video on how to peel and dice kabocha squash, which is the squash that I have here. So check that out for how I did that. I'm going to mix that together. And then for our seasonings, we've got a chili powder. For a little bit of a kick. And then we've got some cumin. I think cumin is in every single veggie burger recipe I've ever used. And then some dried oregano. Feel free to mix up the seasoning however you want. It's a pretty standard recipe here. And some salt. Now in culinary school, I was told one time by my instructor to never measure the salt directly over whatever you're cooking in. And I remember he told me that, and not a minute later I did just that, and the spout popped out, and the whole thing that I was making was just covered in salt. So lesson learned, but I'm going to measure my salt over that little bowl so that doesn't happen ever again. And that is it. So and I'm going to take my gloved hand here, and I'm really going to squeeze. And you can see that it is holding together really nicely. You do not need an egg in this. So far this recipe is vegan. If you have any vegan students, this would be a great one for them. And that looks awesome. Really holding together nicely. So now I'm going to grab our prepared baking tray. You can either do parchment or veggie oil or some pan spray. I love the pan spray because it's just so fast. And unlike parchment paper, if you use the pan spray, it'll get a little crispy, which is really nice. And take my little scoop. And I'm just going to do about a half cup. And at this point, you can check for seasoning. So if you want to take a little spoon and try to make sure there's enough salt, there's enough of the spices, you can do that. There's nothing in here that, there's no egg or anything, so you don't have to worry about eating a raw product here. That looks good. And then make some space. I want to flatten these down a little bit. So a little trick is to take whatever, say I'm going to use this. So instead of just flattening it down, it might stick and then it will crumble and look really bad. Take whatever your tool is, put a little pan spray on it, and that will prevent it from sticking. So it just releases really nicely. And these look awesome. So I'm going to throw these into our oven, and then when I take them out, when they're done, I'm going to show you how to make a really nice burger with these. All right, so we're going to wrap up our quinoa black bean veggie burger here. These are done. I flipped them halfway through, sprayed them first, flipped them so they're nice and crispy on either side. And they really held up well. You know, they didn't hold up as well as you'd want for like a veggie burger that you're going to put on the grill. But for the oven, this is awesome. You never know with veggie burgers, but this is a great one. So I'm just going to place it on our bun here. And then I've got some Boston Bib Lettuce from Springworks. So they're a farm in Lisbon. And they do this really beautiful I love this kind of lettuce for burgers and sandwiches, like BLTs. It's so beautiful because it just has these awesome big leaves, right? So like I'm not going to waste that chopping it up on a salad, but for something like this, it's going to be awesome. And then, so that's a local green, and then we've got some beautiful slicing tomatoes from Backyard Farms. These are available year-round, which is pretty cool. Huge greenhouses. And then we've got some of our shredded Pineland Farm cheese. So local creamery, Maine dairy, Maine cheese, lots of great Maine ingredients going on here. And if I wanted to get really fancy, I would have sprinkled some cheese on, thrown it back in the oven so it melted a little bit, but I think that this will do. So that's our Harvest of the Month recipe for quinoa black bean veggie burgers.